Veterans' check shredded. A cruel act. The Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Treasury walked in. No warning, no cameras, no bodyguards. He wasn't there to inspect the system. He came to fix a mistake named apathy toward a veteran. This wasn't just a failed transaction. This was one of those veteran stories that should never have happened. And if you ever believed that sacrifice is always respected, today's story, from Justice for Veterans, might leave you silent for a few seconds before you dare believe that again. A cold, early winter morning. Snow still clung to the steps of Cedar River Bank. Elias Monroe, 78 years old, slowly walked in, clutching a worn fabric bag. He wore a faded military coat, the collar frayed, a knit cap drooping over one ear. People looked at him like a homeless man who had walked into the wrong place. But no one knew. Inside that bag was a benefits check from the Veterans Administration. No complaints, no special requests. Elias just wanted to withdraw his money, his own money. But to the woman behind the counter, that seemed suspicious. She squinted, looked him up and down, then glanced briefly at the check, and made a decision, one that would change an entire system. "I'm sorry, sir. You can't withdraw this." Rachel Madsen's voice was ice cold. No eye contact. Elias tilted his head. "Is there a problem?" Rachel didn't answer. She held the check up to the light, then ripped it in half. The sound of tearing paper echoed through the silent bank lobby. A few customers turned to look, then bowed their heads, pretending to be busy on their phones. No one reacted. Not a word of protest. Sam Griggs, the morning shift security guard, stood just steps away. He saw it all, but didn't move. Elias didn't shout, didn't argue. He picked up the torn pieces, folded them carefully, and slipped them into his bag, then walked out of the bank as slowly as he'd entered. It seemed like the story ended there, but a pair of eyes at the reception desk had followed him trembling, and that night, an email was sent. Elias Monroe walked slowly along the snowy sidewalk, gripping his bag tightly. His shoulders trembled, not from the cold, but from something else. No one walked with him. No one called out. A man publicly humiliated said nothing in return. No angry reaction, no demands for justice, just the shuffle of elderly footsteps, followed by a long, quiet shadow. He stopped by a small diner at the end of the street. Didn't order, just sat silently in a corner, staring out the window back at the bank. Outside, snow began to fall again. A waitress asked, "Sir, are you okay?" Elias nodded. "I'm fine, just a little sorry. For a piece of paper, and for a person." Night fell. The city lights came on as if nothing had happened. But in the internal mailbox of the U.S. Treasury Department, one email had arrived, sent from an anonymous account. Subject: "Silence is sometimes the loudest accusation." Arthur Sam Griggs sat alone in the security booth during the night shift. The security monitors blinked. A tilted schedule hung on the wall. He'd been a guard for over 20 years. He'd seen a lot. But today, he couldn't stay quiet. Sam rewound the footage. Elias being denied. The check ripped. The bowed head of the old man. No sound. Just images, and the silence made it hurt more. He opened his email and typed slowly, his hands trembling. No name, no title, just the clip and a few words. This wasn't a transaction error. It was a moral one. He sent it to the Treasury Department's Civil Oversight Office. No expectations, no reply needed. But before ending his shift, he looked at the screen once more and asked himself, how many others have been swallowed by silence like that? The next morning, that email was opened by someone no one expected. 8:17 the next morning. Cedar River Credit Union opened like any other day. Rachel Madsen adjusted the badge on her shirt. Director Claymore reviewed files for the morning meeting. The new daytime guard yawned, unaware of what was coming. A sleek black Lincoln pulled up in front of the bank. No sirens, no security detail, no flags. The door opened. A middle-aged man stepped out, wearing a light gray trench coat. His face was as cold as the winter morning. No one recognized him. It was Daniel Hoyt, Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Treasury. He didn't need to introduce himself. No one dared to ask. He walked straight to the counter and stood before Rachel. His voice was deep, slow, and rang like a bronze bell. "I need to speak to the person responsible for yesterday's transaction." Everyone froze. No one moved. Rachel dropped her pen. Director Claymore turned pale and stepped out of the conference room. But Hoyt never took his eyes off Rachel. "You know what you did, don't you?" The air in the bank lobby felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out. Daniel Hoyt stood firm, his eyes steady, his voice low and unwavering. "I didn't come here over a check. I came because of an insult." Rachel couldn't say a word. Claymore tried to intervene. "Sir, perhaps there's been some misunderstanding." Hoyt cut him off. "Misunderstanding? You saw an old man, worn out, silent, and thought, no need to verify, no need to respect." He turned to address the entire staff, voice dropping lower. "When you tear up a veteran's benefits check, you're not protecting the system. You're betraying it." No one dared meet his gaze. A female staffer quietly wiped away tears. Hoyt's tone softened, but it hit harder than ever. "I'm not firing anyone here today, but I will order a full investigation of this branch. Not to punish, but to remind you that justice is not optional." He walked away, didn't look back, but each step echoed, like hammers pounding the door of dignity they had just slammed shut. Within 48 hours, the entire Cedar River branch was turned upside down. An official Treasury investigation began. Every internal email, every security recording, every transaction was reviewed, line by line. Rachel Madsen was suspended. Director Martin Claymore was summoned for a federal hearing. And on the front desk, a new paper was taped up with clear packing tape. Service is not just a transaction. Sometimes it is sacred. A motto, a reminder, a quiet confession. The bank staff grew more silent. Customers looked at them differently, not with trust, but scrutiny. New cameras watched every move behind the counter. No one dared to assume. No one dared to judge. And from Washington, an email was sent addressed to someone very specific. "Mr. Monroe, we would like to say thank you, in person." But Elias Monroe didn't respond. He was elsewhere, doing something else. Something no one at the bank had imagined. Saturday night, Elias Monroe sat by the window of his old rental room, straining tea leaves through a tarnished spoon. The landline phone rang for the first time in years. He hesitated, then picked up. On the other end, a voice strangely familiar. "Rye, it's me, Dan." Elias said nothing. The voice continued, low, filled with gratitude. "I'll never forget that night in Pleiku. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here." A long pause. Elias answered slowly. "I didn't do much, just kept a promise." Hoyt's voice wavered. "And today, I'm keeping mine. I owe you an apology, and so does this country." Elias just smiled, saying nothing. He looked out the window. The snow had stopped falling. On the table lay an unopened invitation. "You are cordially invited, Elias Monroe, guest of honor at the National Veterans Tribute." But he hadn't opened it, because tomorrow he already had somewhere to be. Sunday morning. The town hall was packed. Flags fluttered in the breeze. A military band rehearsed. Amazing Grace. The guest of honor seat in the center stood empty with a nameplate. Elias Monroe. But he never arrived. Not out of anger. Not to avoid anyone. But because he had chosen a different place. A small diner on the edge of town. Elias ordered black coffee, no sugar, and a slice of apple pie. The young waitress smiled. "You like this one, don't you?" Elias nodded. When he went to pay, she whispered, "Someone already covered it. They said, today is to thank you." Elias looked around. No familiar faces. No one waved, but everyone silently nodded as they passed him. No stage. No speeches. Just a nod. Enough for a man who had kept his word all his life.